Good afternoon, everyone who's joined us today. I would like to welcome all of today's guests, panel members, and division participants, and also any other guests of this live event co-sponsored by ACTE and CompTIA. This Engineering and Technology Education Division webinar will provide information, resources, and direction in this time of e-learning, distance learning, and instructing away from all of our normal and regular environments. All of us involved today hope that each of you attending will walk away with some insight and valuable information that can be utilized and shared in each of your unique educational delivery systems as they relate to the COVID-19 crisis. So for those of you that don't know me, maybe you haven't ever been to a Vision, or you're new to the division. My name is Jay Davis. I am the current Vice President of ACTE's Engineering and Technology Education Division. I also currently serve as the Assistant Director for the Greater Lafayette Career Academy in Lafayette, Indiana, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. Our guest presenter, as well as serving as a panel member today, is Amy Cardell. And Amy is the Vice President of Strategic Workforce Relationships with CompTIA. Our other board members today, Amy, thanks for identifying yourself there. Our other panel members today are, and we'll start with Sanal Bhakta, and Sanal is the CTE Administrator in the Clark County School District CTE Department in Las Vegas, Nevada. Welcome, Sanal.
Thank you, Jay.
Yep. Next up, John J.R. Drummond. J.R. is the Department Chair and Work-Based Learning Coordinator for the Doss High School and Design Tech Academy in Louisville,
Thanks,
Kentucky.
Jay.
Welcome,
good to be
JR.
here.
And then our final panel member, Rochelle Krumzik. Rochelle is a pre-engineering instructor for Tulsa Tech at Bixby High School in Oklahoma. And Rochelle is also the incoming Vice President for ACTE's ETED division. She'll be taking that over on July 1st of this year. Welcome, Rochelle.
Thank you, Jay. Welcome, everyone.
All right, so let's just dig into this. We know how valuable everybody's times are. We want to make this as productive as we possibly can. So I'm going to turn this over to Amy Cardell now, and Amy's going to share some resources that CompTIA is offering and or utilizing to assist educators and the CTE community in this time of uncertainty. Amy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Jay. Nice to see all these faces. It's fun to be in virtual meetings. I think we're all going to get really used to this. So I send thanks, first of all. Our industry is so thankful for everyone in education keeping this going during a crisis, right? This is not easy. You don't just show up online and teach. We were talking about that in the warm up to the call with Rochelle, saying, you know, it's very much more work to teach virtually, and I really appreciate that. So CompTIA, being the Computer Trade Industry Association, really wants to be here to help bridge the gap between education and industry. So I think there are some good news pockets and some resources that we can really bring to share to you in these times. Of course, the jobs data is rolling out weekly with grim figures. We have students that are preparing for careers in different career tech education pathways. I'll speak only to the IT side of things. Initial data is mixed but hopeful for technology. We went into this crisis with a big skills gap. We had a lot of jobs that needed to be filled in IT, and we expect that to at least be a bright spot relative to other occupations coming out of it. So we publish a report that we'd like to share with you, and we'll share a link in the chat. That's how we'll share resources during the webinar, to our cyberstates.org report, where you can really drill in and see jobs data. If you're not familiar with that report yet, it'll be updating as data comes to us. We're holding off releasing the latest until it feels right. It's not time to do that yet, but we are seeing early signs of at least relative strength in tech occupations coming out of this, which makes sense because here we are digital online with each other today, and many of the occupations that can keep working and industries that can keep working despite social distancing, of course, are the digital occupations. So we're not surprised by that, but we're cautiously hopeful. I'll share that with you. So as you're preparing your needs assessments for your Perkins grants, we really want you to look at that cyberstates.org report to get some job data. We really feel that's a great resource for you to prepare and see, because you can drill down to your area specifically and look at that. So I think when you look at the big picture, tech is a bit of a safe haven. So that's a big message I wanted to share, and we'll be sharing more data and more research around that as things progress. Couple things I wanted to make sure everyone knows. Our certification side of the house has responded. Our A+, Network Plus, Security Plus certifications, of course, being, and IT Fundamentals Plus being in a lot of schools and colleges. You should be aware that we've extended the expiration of vouchers because we really know this caught everybody unawares, and we are making online proctoring available. So you'll see a lot of announcements around that if you go to CompTIA.org. That is really good news for everyone who's trying to finish and take those exams while test centers are closed, or the voucher expiration at the end of the year is looming. So I wanted to make sure those were the two things I started off with. Job news, I think a glimmer of hope, and some help there for you getting your vouchers and certifications done. And I want to emphasize that the research shows over and over again that students who do have those completed certifications have a better chance in the job market. And we want to make sure, especially now that we're giving our students everything we can. So if we can help with anything with that, please let our team know. I'll turn it back to you, Jay.
Thank you, Amy. If any of you do not have your chat box open over to the right-hand side, I would suggest that you, at this time, open up your chat box. Once again, you can begin at any point here as we start through our panel questions. If you want to ask something related to one of the panel questions, or if you have another question that you would like to pose to one of the panelists, please use the chat box. I noticed Sonal has already put a website, a resource website out there. Anybody that wants to add any resources into the chat box. And by the way, this whole webinar will be recorded, and it will be available through the Engineering and Technology Education webpage on ACTE's website. So I urge you to reach out to others that you know who might benefit from the information that we're disseminating today, and let them know that this is available to them. Okay, so we're going to start through the panel questions. I would just like to do this in alphabetical order, the way I announce the panelists. So when I ask a question, we'll start with Sonal, then go to JR, and then Amy, if you have anything you'd like to add, and then Rochelle. And if you want to just pass it on to the next person, just kindly say, I'll just pass this question on to the next person, or what the previous person said, ditto, and we'll go from there. So we'll just start with the first question. And the first question is just tell us a little bit, each of the panel people, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and then we'll go on from there. So let's just start there. So Sonal?
Sure. Thank you, Jay. As Jay said, my name is Sonal Bhakta. I work for Clark County School District. We are the 5th largest school district in the country. I'm a central office administrator and been supporting our 47 high schools and 59 middle schools for the past 6 years now. Love what I do, love CTE. So, but my background is not in education. So I actually come from the private sector. Did a lot of business in IT consulting prior to going into education. So, you know, everything that's been happening with the last 30, 60 days has just definitely been eye-opening. And it brings me back to some of the days when I had to implement certain systems with companies and things went down and things weren't working and different things like that. So the biggest thing that I do want to say is that I hope everyone is well and healthy, and just keep your head up. I mean, we will get through this together.
J.R. Drummond, teach Louisville, Kentucky, live in Southern Indiana. The Academies of Louisville, some of you might be familiar with. We have 3 IT, tech and design type of academies. I kind of help initiate all of those. Just put my email on the chat box. So if you have questions throughout, shoot me an email. But this is my 18th year. I've taught kindergarten through 12th grade. Have been around a long time, but never through a pandemic. So it's this is new, but also it's I think there's a slight bit of excitement for any educator to kind of see if they can conquer it, and hope to be a resource and rely on a lot of other people during this time as well. So glad everybody's here.
Amy?
So my name's Amy Cardell, and I'm with CompTIA, as I said earlier. I come to CompTIA after 20 years in industry being an entrepreneur in the tech world, and got to be really familiar with CompTIA, using the training certification pathways to build workforce programs in a company I co-founded and brought that to other companies. And got so involved with CompTIA, got involved on our communities and in our certification business, got asked to be on some other committees, and then was ultimately on the board. And until last year, I was chairwoman of the board of CompTIA globally, and really involved with the business. But I wasn't done with this workforce and training thing yet in my blood. And so I was bit by this bug that you've all been bitten by too, it seems, and wanted to help bring industry and education and training closer together and look at ways we can scale that, including with apprenticeship. And so 6 months ago, I stepped over from the board, resigned there, and came on to be involved in workforce at CompTIA. This also is my first pandemic. I don't know if anyone else has had a pandemic before. I love that, JR. But coming from an entrepreneurial mindset and seeing how things can work and we can make things happen, I'm pretty optimistic, especially being in tech, that we can do a lot of good, and we're well positioned to help others, because a lot of our work in IT is a helper job to other jobs, right? So IT companies support doctors. Who's needed more right now? We talk about frontline workers or necessary workers. In some states are calling them essential workers. A lot of these roles are absolutely essential because the doctors can't work without their computer systems, right? So we're seeing a lot of hidden heroes right now, and one of those, of course, is IT. And so now I'll pass it to Rochelle.
Yep.
Hi, everyone. Rochelle Krumzik here. I am an engineering teacher on the PLTW side of things for Tulsa Technology Center at a high school in Bixby, Oklahoma. I have been teaching for 25 years. I'm classically trained as a math instructor, and then I've always been curious about how to apply what I know in math to the real world around me, which led me to the engineering world. And so I'm here representing our STEM folk out there who are teaching problem solving, which this is a great exercise in real world problem solving and how we have to use our brains to think every day, because you never know what's going to get thrown at you, and we can't just memorize what people have done before us. And so I've been teaching for 25 years. I'm in the classroom. I love it. I love the students in the classroom. But this virtual learning thing is hard work. So I'm excited and hopeful for this panel to give us all some solutions.
All right, thanks to all of our panelists. We'll move on now. And once again, I remind you, anyone who has a question, please type it into the chat room as we go through a series of about 5 or 6 questions here for the panel. After that, we will open it up to questions that have been typed into the chat box. If you want to direct your question to a particular panelist, let me know that as well, and we will get to those as soon as we address a few general questions for the entire panel. So the next question up is, given the extremely challenging times we are in, please tell us what you feel is most important for education and CTE leaders at all levels to be doing right now. So Sonal, you're up.
Yeah, one of the things that many of us have struggled with is we're so used to education being the way it is, 4 walls, that physical interaction with students, and now where we're going to hey, I'm in my home, you're in their home. I don't think any teacher has ever had to conduct 6, 7 classes online to students, to hundreds of students ever in their educational training, college, professional development. So I think really the biggest focus is just focusing on our health, but specifically our mental health, or as I like to put it, emotional intelligence. Career in tech ed, I think we've always had a tremendous opportunity to really build the next generation of problem solvers, critical thinkers, problem solvers, and critical thinkers. So think about that emotional intelligence. And just because we can't operate a piece of equipment, just because we can't be there face to face, that doesn't mean we can't have relevant, important discussions with our students about, hey, how are you doing? How are you dealing with this? Do you have any ideas? One company that we worked with just recently rolled out this family challenge that I promoted with some of our educators, saying that, hey, as teachers, we should be supportive of our students in the time that they're in. Or actually, we all should be supportive of each other because we've never had to deal with a global pandemic. The closest thing to this was in the early 1900s, and I hope no one was still alive then, because if you are, you're a rock star now. You're over 100. But I think just focusing on emotional intelligence, that mental health, those social emotional type thinking skills, and just having conversations. I think if anything, this has opened up that opportunity to really have conversations and really connect with students in a different way.
For me, in my role, I look at it as dealing with students and not necessarily Sanal's role is more administrative. So mine is just communication. What's going on? How's your family? How are you? Is anybody out of work? Do you need any help? We have a wraparound service provided with JCPS and Academies of Louisville, where we provide a lot of services in-house. So connecting them with people, I think some of the teachers I talk with, I just preach the message to them. Don't get paralyzed on the fact of, I have to teach my content. Connect with them. This is not intended for extended time. This is, NTI days are for here and there, work on this, come back, let's reassess. So you can get derailed if you just want to look at your pacing guides and want to look at your calendars and want to look at content and want to look at this. They'll get the content, it'll be okay. But in the meantime, how are we providing, like Sanal said, with emotional, how are we connecting with me personally, with my students at a personal level, and just providing new opportunities. I've coached a lot of different sports, and I think if you coach track and you have a great track athlete, you practice and you work on the events they're not good at. So if they're a sprinter, you may work on an 800. They can sprint, but that's just going to make them better overall track athlete. And I see that very similar right now with education. This is provide opportunity. There's a lot of time people have right now that they normally don't, as my wife has let me know around the house. But for our students, I think there's new opportunities for them to, hey, check out this training, whether it's, CompTIA. Amy, I appreciate you guys doing that 60-day free training for kids. That's awesome. So a lot of times I don't have time to go over in class, the Security Plus training. That's a high flyer type of deal. So the kids can jump on there and take their time and go through it. So maybe work away from just the normal routine and just, look for good new opportunities.
Yeah, thanks for that, JR. That's a softball. The other resource we are offering from CompTIA that you should check out is the, if you're not familiar with it already, IT Fundamentals Plus Cert Master Learn is now free. It's an adult course, but certainly suited for high school students who want to skill up. And I'll post a link to that training as well in the chat box for you. So what should people be focusing on now? I think you educators got it right. And it's the same thing we're seeing in the corporate world, and that's communication, because at the end of the day, it comes down to people. And I'll tell you a little story. So I have a friend who is an airline pilot extraordinaire. I live in rural California, and it's not uncommon for people to fly places because driving just everywhere is too far. So my friend Jim always, whenever there's an airplane, anything, we always turn to him and ask for the story. And when there's a horrible airplane crash or anything like that, he's always kind of the family expert, right? So he has this saying, fly the plane. And that's what often goes wrong when planes crash, is the pilot forgot to fly the plane. They relied on instrumentation that was faulty. They got distracted by software that wasn't working. There's lots of reasons that bad things happen, but I think that metaphor of flying the plane really applies right now, because at the end of the day, it's like, get through this alive. And what's the number one job of every parent and educator is to get these kids, you know, across the finish line healthy and whole. And if they learn something, that's a bonus in this situation sometimes too, right? And I think I've heard some stories from moms who have younger kids that are, because I have 4 kids too, that's another hat I wear. My youngest is in high school now, and it's a mixed bag with what his teachers are doing for sure. I'm not worried about it at all, probably because I have 4 kids and I'm a little more relaxed by the baby comes through high school. But I've heard a lot of parents of younger kids really, really concerned that this is going to, you know, ruin their kids for life, these few months of online learning. And I have to really step back and say, wow, this is a very brief time, like you said, JR, and we'll get through this. It's not, you know, a lot of us have had experiences where we got sick in high school and missed half a year for mono, or my crazy parents took me out and we went to Mexico for a year. I didn't even go to school for a year. I have hippie bohemian parents. And so it all kind of worked out. So as much as I want teachers to keep doing what they can do, I think you shouldn't be too worried either. Just remember to keep flying the plane. And that number one responsibility is, like you said, health, communication. And this is teaching modeling for our students, something that we don't see enough of in the workplace. To put that hat back on, it's the soft skills. As someone who's hired and fired hundreds of IT professionals over the years, I've never had to let someone go for the lack of technical skills. It's always been what we call the soft skills, which is the wrong word because they're the hard skills. But it's that emotional intelligence, the communication, honesty, integrity, character issues, or learnable soft skills. And so I would focus on those. What an opportunity to have people grow in those areas that we don't usually get a chance to focus on. So I think it comes back to the basics of communication, like you said, and I agree with my colleagues on the panel. So I'll pass it to you now, Rochelle.
Thank you. As the practicing classroom teacher of the group, I agree with the other panelists have said. For me, it's been an opportunity to practice the professional skills and to work on that side of things, on communicating not only me with them, but their communication back with me, because as Amy had said, it's not usually the technical skills that businesses want from us. While there are some certain technical and knowledge skills that they want, it's usually what we hear employers saying we need more of is the soft skills and the interpersonal skills, and some of what Sanal alluded to with the emotional intelligence, being able to handle adversity and be able to handle it with grace and with dignity and professional attitude. And also, like JR said, the communication, being able to communicate what their needs are so that I can help. And another thing, just being a role model to them to say, hey, this is new for me too. So I'm going to make mistakes. I'm putting things out there for distance learning. And the minute that I post a lesson that I want them to do, there are 5 responses back. Hey, that link's not working. This is not working out right. You said this would work. I would be able to see this. I can't see this. I don't have that at home. And I'm like, okay, guys, it's okay. We're going to work this out together. We're going to be problem solvers and critical thinkers, and we're going to get through this together, and things are not going to work perfectly, not even for me, the teacher in charge of all of you. And I think there's a lot of value in them seeing that and watching how I handle it. But really, my big focus with the students has been to stay in contact with them, to check on their health, and just to give them a familiar face and a little bit of familiarity in these uncertain times. A big thing for us in Oklahoma, and this is probably true across the nation, a lot of my students not only are trying to do 6 classes online in a new environment that they're not used to, mine being career tech and engineering and hands-on, which is sometimes difficult to do in a virtual setting. But we have people in Oklahoma that are in rural areas that don't have great internet connectivity. That's just not reliable. And we also have students who have siblings at home, and they're having to watch their siblings while their parents are at work, and then we're asking them to do all of this work. And then there are students who are sharing devices. There may be 4 students at home, but there may be 1 Chromebook, and they all have to do their assignments. So those are some of the challenges we're facing. And I think it's just really important. The number one important thing is just to extend some grace to everyone and work through this and let the students know that we are taking care of you the best that we can, and this is unusual, but it is short-lived.
Okay, thank you, panelists. We'll move on to the next question. I have seen, please feel free to chat a question to any of our panelists. I noticed JR fielded a question and answered back while we were going through that setting. I also want to welcome Steve DeWitt to the webinar. Steve is with ACTE, and thank you, Steve, for adding some valuable resources that ACTE has, oh my gosh, that ACTE has to offer during this time of uncertainty. So thanks, Steve, for being here with us as well. All right, next question. And this kind of relates to one of the questions I saw in the chat room already. How is your program or school or corporation or those that you may work with creatively dealing with the hands-on learning that is fundamental to so many CTE programs? And we'll start again with Sanal.
Thank you, Jay. You know, I think that's a huge challenge for CTE, but I think that many of our CTE teachers here in Clark County have really kind of risen to the challenge. You know, they've come up with creative ideas. One is, you know, simulations, you know, looking at simulations and doing some problem solving that way. We're never going to be able to replace the hands-on, but can we continue to build that skill set that the student needs to be successful in the workforce, to get the job that they need, those career skills, soft skills, different things like that. Here in Clark County, one thing that you know we've required, you know, all of our teachers to make sure that they touch base with the student and that they're at least, you know, providing information about content and different resources that they can access, whether it's videos, whether it's simulations online, playing, even online games. I mean, you'd be surprised at how many online games. One of our ag teachers recommended to all the students to download Farmville if any of you have ever played Farmville, and it was like, hey, you know, build your farm. And then what he did was a few days later say, okay, come back and tell me, how did you build your farm? You know, what did you plant? What animals did you have? You know, right? So you can't go and tend to a garden, but you could build a virtual garden that way. So a very creative way. And I think we also have to believe in the students as well, right? Because these students grew up with technology in their hands, with the ability, touch screens, all that stuff. So I think if anything, you know, we as educators need to kind of look to them for help and support and resources just as well. Because I think the Farmville idea was actually, if I remember right, the teacher told me it was one of his students, one of his senior students recommended, hey, why don't we play the game Farmville, and here's how you can tie it in to some of our content and curriculum. So I think it's just being creative and just being open to new ideas. So I'm gonna turn it over to JR. He's probably got better ideas than me.
I think this is a great question. I think it's a great problem because it provides job security. There's no replacement for face-to-face instruction. And as long as that's a thing, that's good for teachers. But that being said, I think what Rochelle alluded to earlier was students who don't have internet capability or connectivity. I think that's the biggest issue I see right now. The students who do have that ability, there are, like I put in the comment box, there's plenty of free resources right now that are typically not free. So that's a great thing. Simulations, I had a handful of students that don't have good connectivity, more in a rural area, and just kind of they pick up packets at school, so they're getting their core stuff. I just put in there, take apart something at your house, take a snapshot of it, and or write on a piece of paper what it was and put it back together. So just simple task of problem solving and critical thinking is a short-term fix. I wasn't born in '78, but in our area there was a blizzard, I guess, and they missed school a very long time. So everybody turned out okay there, and I think our students will as well. Amy, you got it.
Thanks. So I think there's a couple of ideas that you've shared that are already totally on track. I'll add a few more from the workforce perspective. And you're right, a lot of these opportunities are easier when you have digital access. And so this is uncovering that divide in one more way. But if you had your students have an opportunity to focus on looking at job search, understanding what's in the job market, looking out at career resources, taking a look at what they might want to apply for. I think jobs are going to be really top of mind with a lot of families right now. So it's a great opportunity to bring that up, to have them take a look at what career pathways we have in IT, have them look at job ads, have them think about those kinds of real practical, real world things that might be crossing their minds. Would be a really good exercise to do that's hands-on, that is a little different maybe than what could usually happen in the classroom. And I love the idea of taking things apart and doing it yourself. I have boys who tend to do that, and the one thing you want to do when you have time is teach them how to do that. So I think that's a non-digital activity that would be a really great thing to do. And every family probably has something broken that a kid can try to fix. I mean, it doesn't even have to necessarily be a high-tech device. It could be a toaster, right? So teaching how to safely unscrew things and put things back together, keep track of parts, and all those skills. What a great chance. I think a lot of families are living a version of, what's it called, Little House on the Prairie, but it's digital now. So, what can we do that this weekend that's practical? If you can have them tie that back on something that the family really needs, like fixing something or working on something in the shop or in the house, I think that's a great opportunity to actually upskill our kids, because a lot of parents have those skills but never have time to share them too. So let's get creative and enable some repairs. Off to you, Rochelle.
For me right now, dealing with the hands-on learning that's fundamental for me, it's maybe a little bit easier because I teach engineering. So I've been trying to come up with lessons that are problem solving, and I just had to tweak them from things outside of my house or out of my classroom to things that most kids should have around their house. So we've done an activity on calculating porosity, and we measured ice cubes, and then we let them melt, and then we compared volumes. So I've been having to rethink and really try to be creative with things around the house that I think most students will have. And then also, as Sanal mentioned, some simulations and games. And then we are also working on just trying to work on those soft skills is really where I focused a lot of my work. It's kind of interesting right now. It's at the end of the year where we should have gotten through most of our learning, and they should have started preparing for certification tests and exams and things such as that. So mostly I've used it as a review time and gone back over some topics that we learned at the beginning of the school year and giving them a chance to revisit those again, because now we're kind of at the expert level where I would be putting them in teams and giving them things to do that they really need a facilitator for, but can't facilitate them because they don't all have the same things at home, if that makes any sense. I feel like if it were at the beginning of the school year next year, which they're already putting those rumors out there, and I hope that's not true, and I'm starting to teach them basics and fundamentals, then things like teaching measuring, we could have a Zoom meeting, and I would get like a cereal box and a tape measure, and we could zoom in on that, and I could demonstrate to them how to measure and do some of those types of skills, hands-on skills, virtually. And again, still a problem for those people who don't have internet connectivity, and that's a big challenge for us here in Oklahoma. About 24% of our students in Oklahoma do not have reliable internet. So working on that is a challenge, but then also like giving an assignment through paper, asking them to measure things and maybe take pictures, because while they don't necessarily have internet pretty much everyone has a cell phone. So we've been trying to work through that and work through some of those issues. But again, trying to be careful of how much I give to them to do, and because we have people sharing devices.
All right. Thank you, panelists. I think we handled that question very well. Enjoyed some of the comments that I heard there. Before we go on to the next question, I'll throw out a little thank you to Sid Lobb, Michael, and David Richardson for sharing some resources there over in the chat box. Couple questions in there for the panelists as well. So as we go on and you're not answering questions, take a quick look down there and see if you can help out some questions that were submitted by Brian and Buzz Wood. Now, our next question for the panel coming up now, and some of these questions, I mean, they're being addressed in a lot of the different ways. So there's going to be some overlap in these because all these questions are very important, and I think some of the important topics have already been addressed, but we'll go on with question number 4. And that would be, I like this question a lot because becoming an administrator in the last year, this comes up a lot, has come up a lot for me in the last couple of weeks. So I'm anxious to kind of see what our panel has to say on this one as well. What advice can you give to other leaders so that they will be able to take decisive actions with courage, of course, when the reality is those decisions will likely be based on imperfect information, knowing that expediency is the essential thing right now? All right, Sunal.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I have 4 words that I thought of when I first saw this question, and that's fail fast and fail forward. Right? This is unprecedented. You know, we've never experienced this, and I think leaders, all of us as educators, we need to be open to new ideas, and we also need to understand some of those ideas may not work, but hey, that's okay. You know, fail fast, fail forward, right? Right. And I love the acronym FAIL. If you haven't heard it, it's first attempt in learning, right? So really, all this that we're doing, all this we've been doing the last 30, 45 days, it's our first attempt to really take our K-12 education school system and make it remote, right? Some schools, some districts are doing a great job. Others, like mine, are struggling. And you know, one thing I'm doing as a leader, I'm reaching out to my PLN, my personal network, my professional network, and asking other educators, other administrators, other teachers, you know, hey, what are you doing? You know, what are you doing? Are you doing Zoom calls? Are you doing Google Hangouts? Are you doing Meets? Are you doing challenges? Are you printing out worksheets? You know, everyone's got a different answer. And especially with the digital divide, you know, how do you handle the digital divide? I think one thing that this has exposed to a lot of leaders is the inequity in education. We all knew it's there, but now it's shined a big bright light on it. And I think hopefully once we're past this, we really can take a look at that inequity in education. And as leaders understand that, hey, you know, we need to come up with solutions. We need to come up with solutions so that we can provide education to all students. But yeah, fail forward, fail fast. JR?
See, you're so good, Sanal, because I take more the sarcastic approach and be like, well, what data can you find during a pandemic that provides what choice to make here? But typically, I believe, and the people that I'm connected with fall in the understanding that we know our kids best and we're the professionals. And part of that is making decisions, and they're not all going to be right, but you want to do best by kids. And we kind of just stick with that and what's going to be the best for our students moving forward. And we just go with it, and we're fortunate enough to have faith and trust from all the entities, our business partners, our parents, and we just work that way. Amy, I'm done.
Well, I'll go back to what I said when I opened up. Teachers are heroes in this scenario. You guys are really figuring it out on the fly. What I'm seeing in corporate world is more communication. I think I'm kind of jealous of people who say, oh, what are you doing with all your free time? I have these virtual yoga classes, yada, yada. I know you teachers don't have that. Well, on the other side, corporate people don't have that really either now. We're really communicating more than ever. And trying to figure this out as we go, but you are the heroes on the front line. So I think that peer sharing you talked about is really important. We have a CompTIA instructor network. We had a webinar there to talk about some ideas you could leverage in distance learning, but we know everyone's figuring this out with the help of their peers. And that's what we want to help facilitate. So if you need any information from the CompTIA instructor network, we're there for you, but you guys have the heavy lifting on the front lines. And I think kids will never forget a teacher who personally remembered them at this time. You have the opportunity to be a huge influence in their lives. And I think that's really an exciting place to be.
Okay, so I'm kind of like JR on this one. I'm a little bit more sarcastic about the thing. You know, when this pandemic comes out and we're going to virtual learning online for students, everybody starts emailing and shoving resources my way for here's what you can do. Here's how you can teach online, from people that maybe aren't even teachers. They're just trying to be helpful, and I understand that. But I had to ground myself and remember that I do know what I'm doing. I have been trained to teach students, and even before pandemic, I have gone from a overhead projector and a chalkboard, and then to a whiteboard, and now to online and a learning management system. So changing modes of delivery is not new for any of us that have been in education for longer than 10 years. It's a little bit, whenever we come out with this pandemic, there's nobody throwing ideas at doctors on how they should treat these patients. Nobody's saying, here, have you tried this? Or here's a great resource for COVID-19, or here's a great way for you to handle your patients. Have you tried protecting yourself this way? They're saying, oh no, you're a doctor and we're trusting you to do the research and apply what you know to the patients and help us get out of this. So that's my takeaway from everything coming at us and what we can do. Follow your heart, trust yourself. You've been doing this all year long, just in a different venue. You've been doing this from the beginning, just face-to-face and in a classroom. And so for me, it's a little bit less of that. And for me as an educator, it's been sifting through all of these resources and trying to figure out what am I going to do. And going back to what Sanal said, fail hard and fail forward, because I'm trying stuff and not all of it works. And I'm just staying with it and saying, okay, that didn't work, what's something else? I'm not trying to do all of it. I'm sifting through it and giving myself some leeway to say, out of these 50 emails that I got for free resources, I'm gonna shoot blind in the dark. This one looks pretty good. And I go for it, and then I decide, does it work or does it not? And if it doesn't work, I'm okay to abandon it or try to adapt it to make it work for me. And so I think that's the big thing right now, is trust yourself. In CTE, in career tech education, this is what I love about being a CTE educator, is that we are constantly evolving and changing for the changing needs of the workforce and for the changing needs of our society. Like, we are not the same society that we were 20 years ago. And so we have that flexibility and that innovation built within our education system to be innovators and change with the punches, regardless whether it's a pandemic and virtual learning, or it's a new type of skill that didn't belong, an IT sector that didn't belong 40 years ago, that now is booming, and we need more and more people to fill that.
All right, well, I can see that I've already got the easiest job in this whole webinar, being the moderator. Boy, what some great perspective has been offered so far. And we'll continue here with a few more questions, but it's kind of like I'm splitting. It's kind of like I'm looking left and then I'm listening. I'm loving the stuff that's going on in the chat room. That is so good. There's a lot of resources being shared over there. And then, of course, the comments that we're getting from our panelists as well. So we'll continue on with the next question. We got about 2 or 3 more questions here. If you have something, if you're fine with the chat room the way it's running right now, if you're getting what you need out of there, let's just continue on with that format. If there's something that you'd really like me to speak up about and, you know, kind of do more of a verbal presentation to someone in particular, I'd be glad to do that. Otherwise, let's just continue to utilize the resources and to ask some questions of our panelists in the chat boxes. All right, next question for the panel. And Rochelle kind of just addressed this one right before I ask it, but we'll throw it out there for everybody to make some comments on. It seems that everyone has come out of the woodwork now to share resources related to distance learning and otherwise, and some seem stronger than others. How do we decipher quality from not so great resources? Sonal?
Yeah, great question. And I think Rochelle said it best. You know, everyone's getting emails on every ed tech company, every educational organization. Oh, we'll give it to you for free for the next 2 months, 6 months, whatever. You know, and I think whether it's free or not, I think you know, you individually as a teacher, as a school district, need to evaluate it just like you always have. And you know, the approach we took is that, you know, we always tried it. You know, we always did a pilot, try it, see if it worked. If it did, great. Or we always reached out to others that had used it. I think the easiest part has been the companies and organizations you already work with, right? Those that you already have a relationship with, having conversations with them about additional resources, additional, whether it's modules or different things like that. That's really the first resource company or organization that we should always look to. Those that you already have a relationship with, because truly those organizations are probably going to be your partners through this. Not to say you couldn't find anyone new. I've sat on a number of different webinars where I've heard it, and I think someone made the comment, I think Stephen made the comment that it does seem like a sales pitch, even though it's free, right? But the other thing is you really have to be careful, because whatever you implement now, you don't want to get in a situation where it comes down to September, school starting up, and now they're starting to send you a big fat invoice, and then you can't afford it. So then you've spent all this time and effort trying to implement something that could be really awesome, but if you can't afford it, then what's the point, right? So I think just being careful. It's okay to try something new, but really make sure that it's a good fit for you, your classroom, your school, and definitely involve other teachers as well in trying it out, right? Because maybe they have an experience, or talk to other teachers just nationally, talk to different organizations. You can always look at ACTE endorses several companies and organizations as well. So, there's a process that they go through to be vetted, different things like that. So, but just take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, but I wouldn't put too much pressure to try to go through those 50 emails. Just like Rochelle said, maybe try one or two, fail fast, fail forward. If it doesn't work, just move on. JR?
Yeah, everything you said. I think the vetting process, work with people that you've worked with before, who is, ACTE backing, and then every situation is a little different. What are you looking for? Typically, if you've been doing it a while, you know what vendors have product that you need. But obviously, not being in the classroom, hands-on, face-to-face, opens up a whole new spectrum and market for those companies as well, trying to sell you on, hey, now that you're distance, we provide this, and this. But just like anything else, you look into it, you spend your time researching it. It's kind of like buying a car. You just don't go and say, that's the one I want, I'm going to go buy it. You kind of look all the ins and outs of it, and you give it a shot. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, get in line with everybody else, because we've all had ones that don't work for us. So, but yeah, pretty much echoing everything you said there.
And I'll just add, I really like what Rochelle said. You guys already know what you're doing, and we're on the home stretch here. I think the school year will be over in a blink. And on the one hand, it seems like every day is longer than it used to be, but this is going to go pretty quick. And so, trust your gut. You already know what you're doing with. You have some partners you already know. Hopefully CompTIA is in that mix, and we're here to help too. But yeah, it does, as coming from CompTIA, it does feel a little bit like a sales pitch. I mean, we walk that fine line too of like, oh, we have something for you. It's free. And we really mean it, because that's what we want to have happen. But yeah, I think the vendors feel that tension too, if they're honest about it. So trust your gut.
I think for me, it's having other veteran teachers, having a community that I can reach out and talk to. Again, like I said, I've gotten email after email and this is free, this is free, this is free, try this. And I just kind of look over it, see if it's a company that I know or one that I have been looking into but haven't talked my school into buying yet. And so then I'm like, here's a free way for me to try it out so that I could buy it later if I want to, because sometimes they'll offer a trial, but then you have to have assurances from your district and information, and my district won't always give that out. And then just having a great community. I'm lucky to be a PLTW teacher, and so they do have an online community forum, and I get a lot of recommendations from other teachers. And I do have a handful of colleagues from around the nation that from meeting at ACTE events and having a network that I can trust and I can talk to and say, okay, did you get this? What are you doing for this? What are you doing for CAD skills? How are you implementing this? And they can give me what they're trying, or they can be very honest and say, I haven't found anything good for that. And then we try to come together and say, okay, then what are we going to do for that? For any of you, I put my email address up in the chat at the top, and I think it'll be shared online. If you don't have someone like that in your area and you would like to use me, I would be glad to communicate with you. Any resources, anything that I have that will help you with that.
Okay, so in the essence of time management here, I wanted to try to keep this thing to about 1 hour. So panelists, I'm going to skip over the next question, and then we just have 2 questions left then. And I'll ask you, we have about 10 minutes or so. If we go over a little bit, I'm not worried about it, but I know how valuable people's time is. So I'm going to go straight to what question 7 on the set of questions I sent to you, because I believe this is an important one. What do you believe will change in daily life for CTE programs as a result of the pandemic and the changes that it has forced us into at the present time? Sonal?
All right, Jay, great question. And I'm going to kind of pull that last question from question 6, how do we find balance? I think that's what's going to change with our CTE programs, is that balance, right? And when I talk about that balance, is what this pandemic has exposed, which many of us in education know, that to some degree, whether it's unintentional or intentional, sometimes we work in silos, right? Sometimes we work just within our classrooms, right? We don't collaborate as much as we should, with other educators, with other CTE professionals, whether it's in my school district, whether it's across town, whether it's across state, just like Rochelle mentioning, hey, here's my email, just reach out to me. I think that's one thing that will change with our CTE programs. I truly hope we have more collaboration across CTE, across the board, across the country, across states, across boundaries, whatever. It's really that collaboration. And our district is a pretty large district. So I've seen it all the time, whereas I could have one engineering teacher doing it one way and across town another engineering teacher is doing the other way. They both have great ideas, but they've never heard of each other. And when I put them in the same room and they start collaborating, it's like this magic happens. So how do you get this magic to happen for educators during this pandemic? So we came up with this idea, and we're rolling it out next week, is we're going to have CTE coffee chats with our teachers not every morning, but once a week in the morning, 7 a.m., 8 a.m. We're going to do a Zoom call like this, allow all of our CTE teachers to come and chat with each other, come and chat with us as district office, could just come and chat, share resources, different things like that. So we, even as a district, are trying to provide different ways to change now, because what's the point of waiting until this is done if this is something we can implement? So I think that collaboration really, I think, has really come to the forefront, that because of this pandemic, that we can all collaborate more, and we should all collaborate more, because we all have great ideas. We should be sharing them with each other. We're not, we don't have anything top secret, at least not yet. So, but yeah, I'm gonna give it over to Jerry. He's probably got a better idea.
I'm just, what bounced on me for that question was more classroom and what's essential, what's not essential with your pathways, with your curriculum during this time. maybe you guys aren't like me, but over my 18 years, there might have been some lessons that were just there to kind of be there. So for me, it's focused, this kind of opened my eyes of, okay, really, let's stick with the essential part of content and what building blocks do you have to have going forward, and how's that, you know, everything we look at is with a lens of essential.
So at CompTIA, we really encourage peer sharing in industry and certainly among educators. I think that's where you're going to get your best information. And I've seen so many great examples of teachers sharing lesson plans because there is no sense in reinventing the wheel. I mean, it really is a great opportunity to do that. And unlike in business, you know, you're not competing for the same customers. So it's real easy to do. I encourage you to do that. But in the big picture, what we'll see coming out of this pandemic, if I put my crystal ball on the table and look into it, is an increased interest in CTE learning. These pathways that we represent lead to jobs with skills. And the repercussions of this economic shock to the system will hit these kids hard and their parents hard. And I think this won't be forgotten soon. This is certainly a big lifetime generational event. And the focus we have on getting people prepared for meaningful career pathways will resonate more than ever. And here today in engineering pathway, and when we look at our colleagues who are maybe in hospitality or in culinary arts, those folks are feeling it more than we are. And I wouldn't be surprised, looking in the crystal ball, if we see more interest in tech careers moving forward, because there is a certain resiliency in our field. So I would be encouraged and look for ways to build on that interest and momentum moving forward. Off to you, Michelle.
I agree with what Sanal and JR and Amy all have said. I think those are all three great points of what we're going to see in the future. For me, I think we're going to see, a kind of to JR's point, taking out some things, realizing some things that we're teaching aren't as essential as what they are, and they may be fillers. And to Amy's point, we're going to have more people looking to career tech education as a way to improve their station in life and for a better, more resilient job than what they have now. And so what I kind of see maybe happening from this is more blended learning from our career tech education, where people don't have to stop a job and go to a career tech center for chunks of time during the day to learn the skill. Where maybe we have ways, now that we've done this virtually and online, where we give them the skill they want to know, they need to know, and we give them ways to practice and master it through online delivery. And then they show up to the tech center to demonstrate to me that they have mastered that skill, and we can check that off. And then they can do some more, like on their own time, be working as they're going to high school or as they're in their current job, be earning those extra skills and those credentials and spending less face-to-face time with me at the tech center, but still getting the lessons and learning and showing up, scheduling time on their time to come and demonstrate or practice with me if they don't get something, and doing less and less of that face-to-face instruction. But with that being said, I don't think it's going to zap in August. That's where we're going to be. I just see us with maybe a move towards that to help with our workforce development and their needs moving forward from here.
All right, let's wrap this up on a little bit lighter note. I'll just ask all the panelists this last question, just to share something with the group. And sorry, I was a little delayed there. I'm typing in something into the chat room, which many other people have done so far. Once again, thank you for that. All of you that have been in this webinar today, thanks for your participation. And so we'll wrap it up here with this question. And please share something funny or interesting or unique related to this whole situation surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic. And we'll start with Sanal.
Yeah, one thing that's really funny is that my daughter is super smart. I noticed this 2-3 days ago, and I was like, you know, what are you doing? And turns out that I did not know this piece of clothing existed. There are AM pajamas and PM pajamas. And when you're working at home, you can just move from your morning pajamas to your evening pajamas because I was like, my daughter went to change, but she changed into pajamas like at noon. And I was like, what are you doing? She's like, oh, I'm moving from my AM to PM pajamas. So I learned that we have I have some clothing I need to buy, which I've started to order some PM pajamas, some more pajamas, so I can just sit in pajamas all day long. JR?
Yeah, I have 3 daughters as well, from 8th grade to 2nd grade. So it's interesting because the 8th grader thinks this is the best thing ever. My 2nd and 5th grader are not as thrilled, but you know, I get sucked in during the day. I just love the memes for some reason. Some of these just, and I told my buddy, I said, you know, you post some, but your real friends are the ones you text the memes to, because there's some you just don't post. But I don't, I just, I get a kick out of that. And so that's mine.
Well, you stole mine, JR. I think the meme exchange is on high alert. There's really great ones. So I want to text you a few later. I think the interesting thing is that we're seeing, most surprising thing I've seen is that my high schooler really appreciates being able to sleep in and is very productive later in the day. Kind of, I joke he's on Tokyo time, like that much later, because his classes are asynchronous. They're not live except for one in the afternoon. I think that's a surprising outcome, that this shift in schedule really might suit teenagers better, but I'm with you on those memes.
For me, it's been before spring break. One of the schools in Oklahoma near where I teach closed down because a student had contact with a person. There were only 3 cases in Oklahoma, and a student in class or at that school had contact with one of the confirmed cases. So they just shut the whole school down. So my students were planning someone to go to their house so they could come to our school and our school could get shut down. This is before spring break. And we had like 3 days before spring break. And then we go to spring break and then they shut school down and we don't get to come back from spring break. And I think the funny thing is the kids are like, when do we come back to school? And I'm like, be careful what you ask for, because sometimes you get it and it's not what you thought it was going to be. So that's been something hilarious to me. And I like Jill's story in the chat where she scheduled a meeting and one of her students was in the parking lot wanting to know, where is everybody? Nobody's here. And she was like, it's an online meeting. And probably my funny tidbit to close, please don't base your judgment of people from Oklahoma on the Tiger King. That is not indicative of how we all act or think or conduct ourselves. Because I know that's a hot topic right now and we're all at home binge watching it. Please don't judge us all by Joe Exotic.
And I'll also share on this one, and this is more personal experience, you know, just my own everyday life and how it's changed with the pandemic, not necessarily directly related to education, but I'm a huge live sports fan. Probably 85% of the television and entertainment or live events that I would watch or attend would be some type of a sporting event. And I'm not really into replays of sporting events that I've already seen before. So I am watching a lot of old time television. My wife constantly is sending me Barney Fife memes, one after another. Because we're watching a lot of the old Andy Griffith show. We're watching a lot of the old comedy series. I haven't, I mean, rarely before the beginning of March would I ever hit the on-demand button on my remote, and I find myself doing that as well, just surfing around constantly. I spend so much time each day on the guide, just going up and down channels. But you know, for me, you know, on the education side, it's been a real challenge. And you know, I'll just kind of wrap this thing up, and then I'll let each of our panelists say goodbye to everyone. But it's been a real challenge for me because you know, just like everyone else, this is totally new to me. I just began an administrative position back in July. So, final comments, Sanal.
other than everyone stay healthy and be well, and we'll get through this together. And I'll drop my email in the chat again. But yeah, feel free to reach out to any of us on the panel. Happy to help.
Yeah, same. Reach out. Can jump in and do what I can. Hopefully you're not one of those 50 emails I get that I skim through and delete, but appreciate you being part of it. And Jay, just a little story for you, because you'll appreciate this. I actually have tickets to the Masters and should be there right now. So I have 4 tickets this year. I was going to take my dad, so it's awesome. But now it's at least in November. So the rest of you, though, stay healthy and stay at it.
Yeah, I think the big message is back to the basics. You know, wash your hands is basic. Do what you know how to do, which is teach is a basic. Rely on the partners you know, that's a basic. And make sure that you put your own oxygen mask on first. So I think that also is true with these memes. I mean, a lot of these stories and old TV shows and even baking stuff at home seems to be the new thing to do. That's a basic. So I think the theme and reminder I have is just stick with the basics and remember to fly the plane. And we'll see you on the other side when we're all back flying airplanes. So if CompTIA can be a resource, feel free to reach out to me directly. I see my colleague Angel Pinero on the call as well. And we're here to partner with ACTE to get industry resources to education. And we want to make sure that you succeed through this. So if there's anything we can do, let us know.
Yeah, just part of what we said, one of the questions that we missed was creating balance. What I would say is just piggyback off of what Amy said, take care of you. That's part of taking care of others. And make sure that you are creating balance and limiting your online time. It is okay to block out a chunk of time where you are not looking at your email, you are not replying to parents or students or bosses. And that's part of being healthy emotional intelligence, is saying and letting your boss know, like, this is my time and you will not hear back from me. Like, if you email me from 5 at night until 8 in the morning, if it's an emergency, I need you to text me because I'm not looking at my emails. And so if it's not an emergency, send it, I'll get it the next day. But if it's something I really need to look at, send me a text or something in that way. So take care of yourselves. That's going to be key in flying the plane and taking care of your students. And feel free to reach out to me. I put my email in the box again for you guys to see. If you have anything that I can do to help you with, I would be glad to do it. And take care and stay healthy.
Final thank you to Steve DeWitt. Steve had to get off here. They're doing these webinars for all of the ACTE divisions. He had to get off here and join another one, but thanks for him for kind of organizing this whole thing, hooking us up with Amy Cardell at CompTIA so that she could join us today. My friends, Rochelle, Sanal, JR, well, I'm going to miss you guys, but I'll see you around. We're all CTE people. And Rochelle, good luck to you taking over as VP of the ETED division here on July 1st. And Lauren, thank you so much for taking care of us and helping us run our Zoom webinar today. And all of those who were in attendance today, stay safe, forge forward. Don't be afraid to fail. Like Sanal says, I think that's great information for all of us to do. And I'm going to go ahead and officially wrap up this webinar and wish everyone a nice evening. And once again, remember that this whole webinar has been recorded and it will be posted on the ACTE's Engineering and Technology Education website. Thanks again for joining us.